There they are again. That perfect line of ants marching up the trunk of your fruit tree, the same line you have been fighting for years. You have tried the sprays, the powders, the barriers from the store. They vanish for a week, and then they are back every single time, as if nothing you do makes the slightest difference. Here is the part that stings. Nothing you did was ever going to work because you have been fighting the wrong enemy, and the poison was quietly protecting the real one. 2,000 years ago, Roman orchardists already knew how to stop this without a single drop of poison. Let me show you exactly what they understood that you were never told the correction. Start with the thing that changes everything, the fact that turns years of frustration into something that finally makes sense. The ants are not there for your fruit. They never were. They are there for something growing on your tree that you probably have not even noticed yet. So, before you do anything else, do this. Follow that line of ants with your eyes all the way up to where it ends. Watch where they are going. Almost always, the trail leads to the soft new growth at the tips of the branches, and when you get in close and turn one of those tender leaves over, you find it. A colony of tiny soft-bodied insects, green or black or gray, packed along the stem and the underside of the leaves, and everything around them faintly shiny and sticky. Those are aphids. And that sticky shine is the whole reason the ants are climbing your tree. Look a little longer, and you will often see the rest of the story written on the leaves. The new growth curled and puckered where the aphids have been draining it, and lower down, a black, dusty coating spreading over the leaves like soot. That black film is sooty mold, a fungus that grows on the sticky honeydew the aphids leave behind, and it is the clearest sign of all that a farming operation has been running on your tree for a while. Once you learn to read those three things together, the ants, the aphid clusters, and the sticky, sooty shine, you will never look at a line of ants on a trunk the same way again. The ants were never after your fruit. They are farming something else on your tree, and your poison is protecting it. Now, one honest note before we go further, because it matters and most videos skip it. Not every ant on a tree is farming aphids. If your ants are marching down the trunk carrying little cut pieces of leaf like tiny green flags, those are leafcutter ants, and that is a completely different problem. For them, the trunk barrier we are about to cover is where you start, and the rest changes. But if the trail leads to aphids and that sticky film, then everything in this video is written for you. This one, look, 30 seconds, following a line of ants to its end, tells you more than any product label ever will, because it tells you what you are actually dealing with before you spend a cent. So, why would an ant care about a colony of aphids? The answer is one of the oldest partnerships in nature, and once you understand it, the whole battle changes shape. The real cause: aphids feed by piercing the tender parts of your tree and drinking the sap. Sap is mostly sugar and water, and the aphids take in far more sugar than they can use, so they excrete the excess as a sweet, sticky liquid called honeydew. That honeydew is to an ant pure treasure, a free, endless river of sugar running down your tree, and sugar is exactly what an ant colony burns through to fuel itself. To an ant scout that stumbles onto a well-fed aphid colony, it is like finding a spring that never runs dry, and the colony will commit serious numbers to defending a find that good. That is why the trail you keep seeing is so relentless and so well organized. You are not looking at a few curious ants, you are looking at a supply line to a resource the whole colony has decided is worth protecting. So the ants do what ants do with anything valuable. They protect the source. They station themselves around the aphid colony and they drive off anything that tries to eat it. The ladybugs, the lacewing larvae, the tiny parasitic wasps that would otherwise wipe those aphids out. Entomologists describe it as herding, and the word fits exactly. The ants tend the aphids like a farmer tends livestock, defending the herd, moving it to fresh growth when the old growth is spent, all in exchange for the honeydew. Some ant species take it even further. They will carry aphids to new shoots by hand, and there is research showing ants will even bite the wings off winged aphids to keep the herd from flying away. This is not a loose, accidental association. It is one of the most precise and most studied partnerships in the entire insect world, an arrangement that has been running by the fossil record for tens of millions of years. The ants get a steady supply of sugar, the aphids get armed guards, and your fruit tree gets caught in the middle, feeding both of them out of its own sap. It is a closed little economy running on your tree's energy, and the ants have every incentive to keep it running, which is precisely why they are so persistent and why they always seem to come back no matter what you throw at them. They are not visiting your tree. They have set up a business on it. Ants don't damage your tree. They defend the thing that does. And that is the reframe that changes your whole approach. The aphids are what weaken your tree, curling its new leaves, stealing its sap, coating it in a sticky film that grows black, sooty mold, and on a young tree, a heavy protected colony can genuinely set back a whole season's growth. On an older, established tree, the damage in any single year is smaller, but season after season of the same drain quietly wears the tree down, weakening it, thinning its harvest, and leaving it more open to disease that slips in through all those feeding wounds. The ants are not the damage. The ants are the bodyguards, which means the moment you understand who is actually doing the harm, you also understand why every can of poison you ever bought made the problem worse instead of better, why the poison fails. Here is what happens when you reach for a broad insecticide and spray the whole tree. Yes, it kills the ants, but it also kills every one of the aphids' natural enemies at the same time. The ladybugs, the lacewing larvae, the parasitic wasps. Those predators were the only thing keeping the aphid population in check, and now they are gone too. And here is the cruel part. The part that explains the endless cycle you have been stuck in. The aphids come back faster than the predators do. Aphids breed at a staggering rate. Many species can reproduce without even mating, giving birth to live young that are pregnant themselves so a colony can rebuild from a handful of survivors in a matter of days. The predators are slower by nature. A ladybug or a lacewing has to find the tree again, settle, lay eggs, and wait for those eggs to hatch into the hungry larvae that do the real eating. So in the window, right after the spray, the aphids come roaring back with absolutely nothing left to eat them, and the ants march right back up to farm a colony that is now bigger than the one you started with. This is why a tree that gets sprayed hard one season so often comes back worse the next, and why the person who reaches for the strongest chemical is so often the person fighting the worst infestations year after year. The spray does not break the cycle. The spray is the cycle. And there is a second reason it fails that has nothing to do with the aphids. The ants you see on the trunk are a tiny fraction of the colony, which lives underground, queen and all, safely out of reach of anything you spray on the leaves. You can kill every ant on the tree today, and the colony simply sends up a fresh wave of workers tomorrow. You are not fighting the ants on the trunk. You are fighting a hidden city that treats your poison as a minor temporary inconvenience. That is a fight you cannot win by killing, which is exactly why the answer was never to kill in the first place. Every spray that kills the ants also kills the only things eating the aphids. So you do not end the problem. You disarm your tree. That is the trap. The poison feels like action. It feels like winning. And it quietly dismantles the tree's own defense system every time you use it. The Romans never fell into that trap for the simple reason that they did not have it to fall into. And what they did instead is the whole secret. The Roman approach was not to kill the ants. It was to interrupt them. Roman orchardists, the agricultural writer Columella, described this kind of tree care in the 1st century of our era. In his great treatise on farming, understood that the ants had to physically climb the trunk to reach the aphids up in the canopy. Ants do not fly. They walk, and every worker heading up to the herd and back down with a belly full of honeydew has to travel that same vertical highway. The trunk was the road, the only road, and if you closed the road, the whole farming operation upstairs fell apart. The ants could not reach the aphids to protect them, and the tree's own predators. The ladybugs and lacewings and tiny wasps, which fly in on their own and do not need the trunk at all, moved back in and did what they had always done. Ate the herd that no longer had guards, and the Romans were not the only ones who arrived at this. The same basic idea, a sticky or slippery band around the trunk to stop crawling insects, shows up again and again across old farming cultures on different continents, each using whatever they had on hand, whether that was pine pitch, clay, or resin. When a technique appears independently in that many places and survives for that many centuries, it is usually because it simply works, long before anyone could write the chemistry of why. The Romans figured this out 2,000 years ago. You do not kill the ants, you cut the road. That is the entire philosophy, and it is the opposite of the poison mindset. You are not trying to sterilize your tree of every insect. You are cutting one link in a chain, the one broken link, and letting the rest of the system rebalance itself the way it already knows how. This is the difference in mindset that separates a garden that gets healthier every year from one that needs more rescue every year. One gardener asks, "How do I kill what is here?" And the other asks, "What one thing do I change to let the balance return?" The Romans, without any of our science, were firmly in the second camp. It costs you almost nothing, it harms nothing you want to keep, and it works with the tree instead of against it. Here is exactly how you do it. The method. The heart of it, the actual Roman trick, is the trunk barrier, a band around the trunk the ants simply cannot cross. The Romans wrapped the trunk in cloth and coated it with sticky pitch. You can do the identical thing today with materials from around the house. Wrap a strip of burlap or heavy cloth around the trunk about knee-high and smear it generously with plain petroleum jelly or a thick horticultural sticky barrier, the kind sold under names like Tanglefoot, which is exactly this idea in a tin and is recommended by university extension programs for precisely this purpose. The ants reach the sticky band and they simply cannot walk across it. No poison, no dead ants, just a road that ends. One important detail that protects the tree itself. Wrap the cloth or a layer of tape around the bark first and put the sticky substance on that, rather than smearing it straight onto young, thin bark, which can be damaged by direct contact. On older trees with thick, corky bark, it matters less, but the cloth first method is the safe habit either way, and it happens to be exactly what the Romans did with their cloth and pitch. You are not building a weapon, you are building a wall the ants simply cannot cross. But a barrier only works if the trunk is the only way up, and this is where most people go wrong. If a low branch touches the fence, if tall weeds lean against the trunk, if a stake or a string bridges the band, the ants will find that detour within an hour. So before you wrap, clear the ground around the trunk and trim any low branch that touches anything so the sticky band is the one and only path. Place the band low enough to be practical, but above where mulch or tall grass could touch it. Roughly knee height on most trees works well. And make it a good few inches wide, because a thin smear is easy for a determined ant to bridge with the bodies of the ones that got stuck first. A wide, generous band leaves them no crossing at all, and renew it. Dust, fallen debris, and rain will all ruin the stickiness over time. So check it every couple of weeks and after every storm, and wipe or replace it the moment it stops being tacky. That is the core. The rest of the Roman and ancestral toolkit stacks on top of it. The second layer is a ring of wood ash worked into the soil around the base of the trunk. Ants navigate by laying down chemical scent trails, and a band of ash disrupts those trails, leaving the ants disoriented at the base of the tree. The reasoning is sound. Ants are, in a real sense, walking chemical machines, laying and reading invisible scent trails to tell each other where to go. And anything that scrambles those trails leaves them wandering in circles at the base of the tree. I will be honest that this one lives more in traditional practice than in hard published proof, so I am not going to hand you a precise percentage for it. But the mechanism is real. Wood ash is free from any fire, and it does no harm in small amounts, so it is a perfectly reasonable second line to stack under the barrier. Keep it a few inches out from the trunk and renew it when rain washes it in. The third layer is repellent plants at the base of the tree. Two show up again and again in old orchard traditions: epizode, whose strong aromatic oils ants tend to avoid, and marigold. Now here I owe you the honest version, because the marigold story gets overstated online. Marigold roots do produce a real studied compound called alpha-terthienol, but the solid, peer-reviewed evidence for it is against soil nematodes, not ants. Its reputation as an ant repellent is more traditional than proven. So, plant marigolds for a genuinely useful, pretty low-cost layer that does real work in the soil against nematodes, but do not expect them to do the heavy lifting against ants the way the barrier does. Epizote is the stronger bet of the two for repelling insects because its oils really are pungent enough that many crawling insects steer around it. Tuck a few plants in a ring about a yard out from the trunk. Think of these plants as a supporting cast that makes the base of the tree a less inviting place to be, not as the main event. And the fourth layer is the one that actually makes the whole no poison approach work. Bring the predators back. Once the ants are blocked and you have stopped spraying, the ladybugs, lacewings, and parasitic wasps return on their own, and you can invite them faster by letting a few small flowered plants bloom nearby. Let some cilantro, fennel, dill, or a carrot go to flower at the edge of the bed. Those tiny flat clusters of flowers are the perfect feeding station for adult lacewings, hoverflies, and the little parasitic wasps, because the adults live on nectar and pollen, even though it is their larvae that hunt the aphids. Give the adults a reason to hang around and lay eggs near your tree, and you get a standing army. A single lacewing larva, the tiny alligator-shaped hunter people call the aphid lion, will eat hundreds of aphids before it grows up, and the parasitic wasps can quietly wipe out a whole colony from the inside in a couple of weeks. That is your real pest control, working around the clock for free the moment you stop killing it and give it something to eat. The barrier buys you the time. The predators do the actual work. There is one more, and it is the one sitting in your kitchen right now, citrus peel. So, how does the humble orange peel end up on this list? That is the last piece verified proof. Let me separate what is genuinely backed by evidence from what is just repeated online, because that difference is the whole point of this channel. What is solid? The ant-aphid partnership is one of the most documented relationships in insect science. The fact that broad insecticides wipe out aphid predators and let the pest rebound is a core principle of integrated pest management, taught by extension programs everywhere. Sticky trunk barriers are real, recommended, and effective. A lacewing larva really does eat aphids by the hundreds. The alpha-terthional in marigold is a real peer-reviewed compound, and the citrus peel trick has a real mechanism behind it. Peel is rich in D-limonene, a terpene that is genuinely toxic to soft-bodied insects and disrupts ants' scent trails. It is the active ingredient in a number of commercial ant products. Boil the peels for about 15 minutes, let the water cool completely, and wipe it along the trunk from the base up to the first branches with an old cloth. You are applying a mild, homemade version of a real insecticidal compound, one that both bothers the ants and disrupts the scent trails they rely on. It is not as long-lasting as the sticky band, so think of it as a supporting wash you refresh whenever you have peels, which in most kitchens is often. Now, the honest part. You will see specific, impressive numbers attached to these methods online. This technique gives a 72% reduction. That one gives 84%. I went looking to verify those exact figures and the specific studies behind them, and I could not confirm them, so I am not going to repeat them to you as fact. The mechanisms are real. The precise percentages I cannot stand behind, and I would rather tell you that than pass along a number I have not checked, because the moment a channel starts inventing exact figures to sound authoritative is the moment you should stop trusting it. The honest version is less tidy and more useful. These methods work through mechanisms that genuinely hold up. The sizes of the effects depend on your tree, your ants, and your weather. And the only number that should matter to you is the one you measure in your own yard. Here is the test you can actually run yourself, which is worth more than any borrowed statistic. If you have two similar trees, band one and leave the other alone as a control. Over the next 3 to 4 weeks, count the ant traffic on each trunk and check the aphid colonies on the new growth. You will see the difference with your own eyes, on your own trees, in your own climate, which is the only proof that actually matters. Take a photo of the banded tree and the control tree on day one and again a month later. So you are comparing real before and afters instead of trusting your memory, which has a way of remembering whatever you were hoping for. That simple side-by-side is the honest experiment that confident videos never show you, because it would reveal exactly how much or how little their method did. And that word, climate, brings up the honest limit. The honest limits and maintenance, and of this is a one-time fix. and none of it works everywhere equally. In a hot, wet tropical climate where heavy rain falls in sheets, a sticky band washes out fast and an ash ring dissolves into the soil within days. You will be renewing them constantly, and some seasons you will be fighting a losing battle against the weather. In a milder, drier climate, they hold far longer, and the sticky band especially can go weeks between touch-ups. That is not a flaw in the method. It is just the truth of working with natural materials outdoors, and anyone who promises you a permanent, weatherproof result is not being straight with you. The upside is that the two levers that matter most do not wash away. Stopping the poison and feeding the predators both keep working through any weather because they are about the living system around the tree rather than a coating on the bark. So even in the wettest climate, the core of this still holds. The barriers just. So treat this as tending, not a single treatment. Renew the sticky band every couple of weeks and after rain. Keep the low branches trimmed and the weeds down so the barrier stays the only path up. Re-wet the trunk with citrus water when you have peels to spare. And let those small flowers keep blooming so the predators have a reason to stay. It is a rhythm, not a one-off. A few minutes here and there through the season, instead of one dramatic afternoon with a spray can that undoes itself. And the good news is that the rhythm gets lighter over time, not heavier. The first season is the most hands-on while you are blocking the ants and waiting for the predators to move back in. By the second season, with a living population of ladybugs and lacewings already established around your trees, the aphids never get the chance to explode the way they used to, and your job shrinks to keeping the bands fresh and the flowers blooming. You are not signing up for endless work. You are setting up a system that increasingly runs itself. And remember the exception we started with. If your ants are leaf cutters carrying green flags rather than aphid farmers, the barrier still helps keep them off the tree. But the aphid logic does not apply, and you are dealing with a different creature that needs a different plan. Match the fix to the ant in front of you, not the ant in the thumbnail. This is exactly the kind of honest detail the flashy versions of this video leave out, because one weird Roman trick kills all ants is a cleaner promise than here is how to tell which ant you have and treat each one differently. But the clean promise is the one that leaves you frustrated when it does not work on your particular ant. The messier, truthful version is the one that actually gets you results. The cost look at what all of this costs, because that is the quiet revolution in it. The citrus peel came free with your breakfast. The wood ash is free from your fireplace. The burlap and the petroleum jelly are a few dollars once. The marigolds and the herbs are a seed packet. And the predators, the ladybugs and lacewings that do the real work, cost nothing at all, because they were always going to show up the moment you stopped killing them. Compare that to the poison, which you have to buy again every season, which works a little less well each year as it keeps knocking out your allies, and which quietly makes next year's infestation worse. The Roman way is not just gentler, it is cheaper, and over time it is the only one that actually gets easier instead of harder. Because every season you leave the predators alive, the standing army around your tree gets a little stronger. The poison approach compounds against you. This one compounds in your favor. That is the real lesson buried in a 2,000-year-old orchard. The cheapest, most durable pest control was never a product at all. It was understanding the system well enough to nudge one part of it and let the rest do the work for free. Ending. So here's the whole thing, honestly, from the start. The ants on your fruit tree were never the real problem. They are the bodyguards of the aphids that are, and every poison you sprayed killed your tree's own defenders and brought the aphids back stronger. The Romans understood, 2,000 years before anyone could explain the chemistry, that you do not win this fight by killing everything. You win it by cutting one road, blocking the trunk, and letting the garden's own balance come back. Wrap the trunk and close the ant highway. Clear the branches and weeds that would let them detour around it. Wipe the trunk with citrus water, ring the base with ash, tuck a few marigolds, and let a little cilantro flower nearby to call in the predators. Then step back and let a system that is millions of years old do the job the spray can never could. and notice what you get back besides a healthier tree. You get a garden that is safe to walk through barefoot, safe for the bees that pollinate your fruit, safe for the ladybugs your kids can catch, safe for the soil under it all. Every one of those things is quietly poisoned by the spray first approach, and every one of them comes back the moment you stop. The Roman gardener was not being noble or sentimental. He simply understood that a fruit tree is not a machine to be sterilized, but a living thing sitting in a web of other living things, and that the smart move is almost always to nudge the web back into balance rather than tear it apart and stop poisoning the tree to save it. Interrupt the ants and let the garden defend itself. Now, I want to hear from you down in the comments. Follow that ant trail on your own tree this week and tell me what you find at the end of it. A colony of aphids and that sticky shine or something else entirely? Because what you find tells you exactly which of these steps to start with, and I read every single comment. And if this changed the way you see that line of ants on your trunk, subscribe before you go. There is a new no-nonsense video like this one every single week, digging up the old, honest ways of growing that actually work, and the science that finally explains why.